Welcome to Cryptid Radio. I'm Adeline. I've rigged up this relay tower to bring you this broadcast on cryptids and creatures of the area. I come up to change out the holotape when I can. It gets pretty crazy out there. It's summer, 1995. It's a warm Friday afternoon. Mom and Dad are home from work. The kids don't have school, so the family packs up and decides to go play at the Monongahela riverbank. Mom, Grandma, and Debbie set up blankets on the shore to sunbathe and have a picnic. Dad, Billy, and Grandpa have all their gear to go fishing. As they head down to the bank, Grandma calls out, "Now don't you go letting Billy get too close to the water. You don't want the river monster snatching him up." Dad chuckles. Grandpa says,
"Now, Margaret, you know those are just some old tales. There's no such thing as the river monster."
The family goes about their day, the men fishing, the ladies relaxing in the warm sun. Dad notices some churning in the water. He casts out his line. Churning like that can only mean a big fish. It could feed the whole family tonight. As the hook hits the water, the churning becomes more intense. It becomes more like waves. Out of the waves rises a 20-foot tall monster with a spiky shell and pointed snout. Dad and Grandpa yell for Billy to get back. Debbie, Mom, and Grandma look over and begin screaming as the monster lunges for Billy, grabbing hold of his shoe, beginning to drag him into the depths of the river. Dad and Grandpa each pull on one of Billy's arms. They just barely manage to pull Billy free as the shoe slips off in the monster's mouth, and it sinks back into the riverbed. Grandma Margaret says, "Thank the Lord! I told you there were river monsters, Frank. You believe me now?" If you were from West Virginia before the war and you grew up around the Monongahela, Ohio, or Allegheny rivers, you likely have heard the tales of the monster that lies beneath. You maybe had a cousin or uncle or friend that had a story of a run-in. That creature was the Ogua, often described as a 15 to 20 foot tall, 400 to 500 pound turtle with a huge spiky tail and sharp snout. There were the rare reports that it had two heads, but those could easily be explained away as being from inebriated individuals. The most prominent feature of the Ogua was its tail. Some say it was the size of a pickup truck or larger. You could tell where the Ogua had been by the tracks its large tail made as it was dragged behind it in the mud. The Ogua was said to inhabit the rivers, but also occasionally stalk the land for prey. It usually ate deer, but had also been known to take in children from the banks. The natives that inhabited the area long ago respected and feared the Ogua. They would tell their people, specifically their children, not to swim or play too close to the water's edge. Shaman were said to have performed rituals and left offerings to keep the creature from attacking the tribe's camps. When European pioneers came to the area, they also reported spotting the huge dark creature beneath the surface. One of the earliest documented sightings is from 1795, near what became known as Holt, West Virginia. A 12-year-old boy was fishing on the riverbank when a gigantic turtle-like creature erupted from the water, seized the boy, and dragged him screaming down into the river. While that was the first reported sighting, it was only one of many. Another well-documented sighting is from 1983. John White, a coal miner, claimed to see the huge beast while fishing in the river at night. He watched in horror as the beast rose from the water, whipping its tail just yards from where he sat. White's story hit the local papers and caused even more eyewitnesses to come forward. The Ogua legend continued to intrigue, confuse, and frighten people for many, many years. A few months ago, I was tracking a cultist group through the mire. I was trying to understand how my cultist friend Aggie had become so indoctrinated in their ways. I get being obsessed with Mothman, clearly. But I don't get the whole praying, chanting, sacrificing to him thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. While observing the cultists, they began talking of a creature with ancient blood. I was intrigued. Mention the word ancient and suggest that it still exists, and I'm totally in. As I listened, they started describing the creature. They said it was very tall, with a thick, pointy shell and tail. One of them said it looked like a turtle they had seen in a book from before the war, but gigantic. I knew it had to be the Ogua. I had read about it some in the Vault Library and even more in notes in Van Loo taxidermy. The cultists traveled a path through the mire, then down south through the cranberry bog, as they tracked the creature. I wasn't sure how they were tracking it. I didn't see any tail tracks or footprints, but they were sure they were going the right way. When we got to Cranberry Glade, the cultist elder declared that they were setting up camp. They built a little settlement nearly overnight. I began sneaking around, trying to figure out why they decided this was where they were settling. And then I found it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was a freaking nest. It had to be a nest of Ogua eggs. She must have snuck through the rivers and waterways through the mire and cranberry bog while the cultists were traveling on land. She was just trying to protect her babies. And those freaking cultists were setting up a camp to wait for her to come back for her eggs. I wanted to wait until the middle of the night and sneak the eggs out of there, but I couldn't. I didn't want a chance pissing off Mama or moving them somewhere she couldn't find them. So I just watched and waited. While the cultists passed time worshiping and praying, they also took time to set up a coup to steal explosives from the Blue River caravan. Their plan was to use the explosives to take down the Ogua and sacrifice it to Mothman. But honestly, I'm pretty sure they're not sacrificing things to Mothman at this point. It has to be some other being that's fooled them into thinking it's Mothman, or it works for the Mothman. But that's a theory for a whole other day. Anyway, they succeeded in their heist. But what they didn't expect was that Luca Costa had friends that were willing to help him get his cargo and pack Brahmin Mona Lisa back. The ruckus from the fight must have awoken the Ogua, because there she was, in all her glory. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't quite as tall as I expected, and her tail wasn't as long. I wonder if that's a difference between males and females. But she was very formidable. She was protecting her babies. The fighting, however, injured her greatly and scared her away. Thankfully, the cultists weren't able to sacrifice her. Her eggs are still there, though. The cultists keep an eye on them, waiting for her to come back. But I go check on them occasionally, too. If they ever hatch, you bet I'm going to gather them up and get them to safety, even if that means facing their mama's wrath. I can't let the cultists try to sacrifice them, too. Until next time, keep your eyes open and stay safe out there.